So another lesson for 10A3 on Macbeth. This is going to help you prepare for your assessment that's coming up on Wednesday. I haven't created the PowerPoint. I have adapted it from my esteemed colleague, Miss Murphy. So big shout out to Miss Murphy. Thank you for this PowerPoint, but I have changed it around a little bit. I have actually just been joined by my son William, who's come to show me a spider he's found in the garden. Are you going to say hello, William?
Hello, 1003.
Okay, right, now off you go, and make sure you shut the door, William. No more
Bye.
interruptions. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is the question we're going to be working on today. It's an extract question, and it's not actually it's not actually a past paper. I don't think it's one that we've created ourselves, but you'll get a sense of it. So there's the extract and the question. Starting with this moment: to what extent does Shakespeare present Macbeth as a character affected by guilt? Right. So first pause moment. Before we do anything, we need to get absolutely clear in our minds what is the central message of the text that we are studying, in this case Macbeth. So I'd like you to pause, and in one sentence I'd like you to write down the central message of the play. 10A3, you should know this. This should be revision. We've done this. So in one simple sentence, or not necessarily simple sentence, but one concise sentence, think of it as the moral of the play. What does Shakespeare want to his audience to get from the play? So to help you do this, think it's a tragedy. So, what leads to Macbeth's downfall, that will have something to do with the moral of the play. So pause, write the sentence down. Okay, I hope you have got a sentence now, the central message, and that will underpin any question that you answer on Macbeth. And I wonder how many of you got something like this. So ambition, unrestrained by morality, leads to the destruction of oneself and the natural order. It is important to recognise that we view ambition slightly differently these days. That we want our students to be ambitious and have aspirations and want to do well, but we have a different attitude to social mobility than they did in the 17th century and the 11th century. And particularly if you had ambitions to be above your station, as to be a king when you were just a thane, then that was not right. And particularly the fact that it is unrestrained by morality leads to Macbeth's destruction. But also think about what it does to Scotland and how Shakespeare shows the destruction and the ruin of Scotland. Bleed, bleed, poor country, says Macduff in Act 4, doesn't he? So that would be the natural order. Just following on from a video I have also posted today, more stuff on form. So we have iambic pentameter up there, blank verse, iambic pentameter but no rhyme. Iambic pentameter, that's 5 iambs, 5 sets of 2, and weak strong, didum. So you should have 10 syllables, didum, 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 didum. Okay, so fair and foul a day I have not seen. There's an example of iambic pentameter. So the majority of the play is written like this. And it's used for the upper class characters, so the nobility. Rhyming couplets. These usually end a scene. It shows finality, and normally spoken by the most important person on stage at that time. So not necessarily the most important person in terms of the dramatic characters, but in terms of their position in that society. So the king would close a scene rather than Macbeth, for example. So King Duncan would close a scene rather than Macbeth, even though Macbeth is the main character. However, Shakespeare didn't always do that, and look out for when he doesn't do it. So the Doctor ends a scene in Act 5 rather than Macbeth. Prose, unlike verse is rhythmically structured. Prose is grammatically structured. So any novel, any newspaper article, anything like that is written in prose, and that would be used for the lower class characters. But think about when Shakespeare has Macbeth speak prose and when he has Lady Macbeth speak prose. showing that kind of loss of control. And then trochaic tetrameter, that's the meter that the witches speak. So trochee is similar to an iamb, so it's 2 syllables. So if it's tetrameter, that's 4 sets of 2. However, it's kind of reversed. Now think about that. The witches speak in a reversed meter. So it's strong weak. So it's dum-dee, 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 dum-dee. Okay, however, they also speak irregular. So fair is foul and foul is fair. It's only 7 syllables there, but it's the first syllable. Fair is foul, and listen to the words that are stressed, fair and foul, and also in Macbeth's line, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. Fair and foul are both stressed. We would call an iamb, so going weak strong, it goes up, so it's a rising rhythm. A trochee, strong weak. Dum-dee is a falling rhythm, falling, downfall. Think about all of this. Context, we have these things. I'm not going to go into, I'm going to try not to talk as much, but I'm failing miserably. So we've talked about the gunpowder plot, and how that was contemporary to when the play was written, and there was a medal commemorating James I's escape, and on that medal it had a snake concealed by flowers. So think about that. Looked like the innocent flower, and you can Google that, and it'll come up in the images. Witchcraft I talked about in my previous video, and the idea of a Christian audience believing in the divine right of kings, and would know about that downfall that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth have set themselves on in wanting to commit high treason and kill the king. Okay, so the question, if you remember, is about guilty. So think about, what does feeling guilty mean? So have a pause and see if you can write down what you think guilty means. It doesn't have to be a sentence, it could just be a collection of bullet points, words. What does guilty mean? Okay, if you've done that, you might think of that feeling of worry or unhappiness, that you have done something wrong, causing harm to another person. So he suffered such feelings of guilt over leaving his children, for example. She remembered with a pang of guilt that she hadn't called her mother. Sorry, I went forward. So the idea, guilt, remorse, feeling bad if you have done something wrong. And that's a dictionary definition, just copied and pasted, I think. So I want you to pause again and think about, when in the play does Macbeth feel guilty? Go through the whole play, Act 1 to Act 5. Pause. It should take you about 6 or 7 minutes to get those down. Do it from memory. Try and think, when in the play does Macbeth feel guilty? Go. Okay, if you've done that, now spend a few minutes, about the same time, pausing. When does he not feel guilty? Because there are times when he's actually quite pleased with himself and happy in what he's done. So equally, write those down. About, again, 6 or 7 minutes. Okay, so you should have a number of instances from the whole play when Macbeth feels guilty. So that would be supporting points. Remember the questions: to what extent does Shakespeare show Macbeth feeling guilty? And this would be a contrary point. So this would be showing how actually Shakespeare doesn't always show him as feeling guilty. And that's a good thing to do, to look at the question and think, how can I agree with this? How can I show support the premise of the question, but also how can I disagree with it? How can I argue with it? And that would make a much more conceptualized response to the question. So here we go. Starting with this moment: to what extent does Shakespeare present Macbeth as a character affected by guilt? And there's the extract. Whence is that knocking? House with me, when every noise appalls me. So you should know that is Act 2, Scene 2. It's just after the murder of King Duncan. The murder, incidentally, which we never see on stage. So now I'd like you to pause, and I want you to pick out a few quotations. I would say at least 3 or 4, because remember what I've said to you, you should be aiming for 3 to 4 peel paragraphs in your assessments, in your exam responses, and they should all include quotations from the extract, but also include quotations from the rest of the play. So what 4 quotations are you going to choose from this extract? Remember, you've got to pick quotations that help you answer the question, but also you can analyse language, form and structure. 5 minutes to do that then, guys. Pause, 5 minutes, at least 4 quotations. Go. Okay, so what have you looked at? Have you looked at the amount of questions that there are in there? The idea of confusion, the idea that his hands are capable of plucking out his eyes. This damage that he feels that he's done himself. The imagery of all of the oceans not being able to wash his hands, rather his hands are going to make the sea red. I always think of Jaws when I say, if you've seen the film Jaws, you'll know what I mean when I hear that image. But then the extract includes Lady Macbeth. And look, my hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white, that colour of kind of purity and innocence. So you might think about that. So let's think. With your essay plan now, you've got 4 quotations. Now I'd like you to think about what your 4 peel paragraphs are going to be. So I've given you some suggestions from the quotations you could have looked at from the extract. You've probably got your own, and you've got your ideas from the rest of the play, I hope, where Macbeth feels guilty and where you think Shakespeare shows him as not feeling guilty. So pause, 5 minutes. Let's have a paragraph plan. Okay, so you should now have a load of quotations, a load of instances from the play where you think Shakespeare shows Macbeth as feeling guilty and where he is not feeling guilty. I am going to just show you a suggestion. You might use this, see if it matches yours. If it does, great. If it doesn't, have a little adapt it slightly. So paragraph 1, might think of how he feels nervous. Here, lots of questions. You might link that with Lady Macbeth sleepwalking and the idea Macbeth hath murdered sleep. Hears knocking and wishes it could wake Duncan. And he talks about the noise appalling him. Think about when he hears about Lady Macbeth's death. They hear a shriek, don't they? And he says there would have been such a time when I would have, what's the line now? There would have been a time when I would have been scared at that noise. I can't remember the exact quotation. But that's in Act 5. The metaphor about his hands, the show of guilt, the red-handed, blood on your hands, the motif of blood, the rest of the play, the shift of guilt from Macbeth to Lady Macbeth. Then think about when he arranges Banquo's death and doesn't seem to care, but the appearance of the ghost suggests that guilty conscience, but he still has to carry on. He talks about that blood image. I am so far stepped, I am stepped in so far that were I to wade no more, returning were as just as tedious as to go, something like that. Sorry, this isn't. I haven't got the text in front of me, but you should know these key quotations. And then paragraph 4. As he develops, he becomes more evil, kills Macduff, turns into a tyrant. He feels that he is invincible, and that he, after he gets more predictions from the witches, he thinks, I cannot taint with fear, he says, and he just seems, he doesn't care, does he? So quotations you could use from the other place: too full of the milk of human kindness. I'm in blood stepped in so far. That's the quotation. Returning were as tedious as go o'er, and I've supped full with horrors. Those are again just suggestions. And use this framework. Use the video that I posted last week to create that. You might want to pause and have a look at that in more detail. And then pause and have a look at the assessment criteria. So have a go at that, do a peel paragraph, and you can submit that to me via Schoology. Thank you.